The broadcast came without warning, at 6:41 UTC. Every screen on Earth blinked: white phones, billboards, tablets, TVs, even the aging control panels in the deepest oil rigs and Antarctic weather stations. Then, a pulse, a frequency low enough to make teeth ache and dogs howl. Static swirled into focus, and then they spoke. The image was simple: a sterile, dark chamber shaped like a crescent moon. In its center stood a creature that looked like it had been carved from obsidian and arrogance. Its skin shimmered with violet veins, and its voice had no mouth, just a vibration, like a god whispering across dimensions. To the planetary entity designating itself Earth, it said, "You are hereby annexed by the dominion of Erleth. Resistance is non-viable. Your species will comply. Your resources will be reallocated. Your genetic materials will be preserved for utility. You will kneel. You will surrender. There will be no second offer." The transmission ended 38 seconds after it began. For the first 2 minutes, Earth stood still. It wasn't fear, it was processing. And then, humanity reacted the only way it knew how. The first meme was uploaded by a teenager in Istanbul. The alien overlord photoshopped onto a bottle of toilet cleaner underneath. So that's what caused the diarrhea. 37 seconds later, a Twitch streamer in Brazil did a reaction video where he paused the alien's declaration halfway through, turned to camera, and said, "Bro, I didn't even surrender to my group project." By the end of the first hour, #Kneel, this trended worldwide. Within 6 hours, a coordinated mass response was underway. People poured into streets, rooftops, and city centers with camera drones and broadcast gear. The plan was ridiculous, chaotic. At exactly 18 o'clock UTC, humanity responded. The largest live-recorded message in Earth's history. 8 billion people, across every time zone and continent, raised their hands to the sky and gave the middle finger. The response was synchronized, loud, and backed by Musica, remix of Beethoven's Fifth and Rage Against the Machine. Someone even projected a hologram of the alien leader behind them, now wearing clown makeup. The message was clear: come get some. Up in low orbit, the Dominion flagship received the signal and went eerily still. Inside its command core, high strategist Yetalor of the Dominion stared at the replay with what passed for confusion. His eyes clusters of nanite swirling lenses, replayed it from every angle. "Commander," one of his subordinates croaked. "Is this mass defiance?" "No," Yetalor muttered. "It's worse. It's mass mockery." He had conquered 47 planetary systems, broken 10 civilizations, reduced to Type 2 societies to rubble. But this display of coordinated, unfiltered insolence was something new, something illogical. The Dominion had studied Earth's signals for decades, its psychology, biology, languages. They expected fear, primitive aggression, desperate obedience. Not this. Yetalor turned to his war advisors. "Begin surface deployment. Erase 2 cities. Target must understand consequence." On Earth, 2 cities went dark, Mumbai and Chicago. Shockwaves tore through buildings. Fires rose into the sky. Dominion warcrafts, slick black machines shaped like inverted scythes, hovered above the ruins for 5 minutes, transmitting the same cold warning: "This is what Defiance brings." But the humans didn't respond with panic. They responded with rage and sarcasm. Within an hour, graffiti appeared on collapsed Dominion drones. In both cities, survivors dug into rubble, spray-painted alien war machines with crude messages: "You missed and I'm still standing." One old man in Chicago missing half a leg, shirt stained in blood, used a stick to draw a middle finger in the ash and pointed it straight at the drone. Overhead. His photo went viral. They called him Grandpa Fu. He became the face of the movement. By day 2, the Dominion expected surrender. It was standard. Their playbook predicted emotional collapse within 36 hours of mass casualty events. Instead, they were hit with what would later be called the sarcasm wave. Radio hosts turned the alien voice into soundboard material. Kids made TikToks pretending to be Dominion officers failing basic tasks like using a doorknob. A French bakery renamed all their pastries Neil tarts. In Tokyo, thousands gathered in Dominion target zones wearing inflatable alien costumes and moonwalking in synchronized Defiance. They dared the enemy to shoot. They didn't. Yet Alar watched the feed with growing dread. The humans weren't afraid. They were enjoying themselves. "This is not strategic," his analytics officer whispered. "It is irrational." "No," Yetaler replied. "It's a threat." He wasn't wrong, because below the memes and the middle fingers, humanity was preparing. In the shadows, bunkers activated. Old military satellites blinked to life, abandoned. Cold War caches were raided and rebuilt. And somewhere deep in a mountain once used for particle experiments, a young coder named Jinho Kim plugged into the Dominion's network. He was 19. He had epilepsy. He had no military training, but he understood. Chaos. Jinho had grown up gaming, hacking, living in forums where human thought flowed faster than logic. And he saw the Dominion's weakness instantly. They were perfect. Too perfect. Too clean. No culture. No randomness. No resilience. So he coded something ugly, glitchy, human. A virus, with no purpose but to scramble their expectations. It didn't destroy it. Confused, when uploaded through a hijacked Dominion drone, the virus caused one of their fleet's AI to begin quoting Shakespeare. Another to confuse left and right. A third stopped in midair, spelled out WTF in sky trails, and self-destructed. The humans called the program Project Trollstorm. The Dominion didn't understand what was happening. Their control systems weren't being broken. They were being corrupted by humor. Worse, emotions began leaking into the network. Not human fear, human audacity. That night, Yetaler convened his war council in silence. The recordings were clear. Humanity had turned mourning into mockery, fire into memes, and a declaration of war into a punchline. They were no longer just resisting. They were enjoying it. That made them dangerous. The next phase began. Dominion dropships landed in over 30 major zones. They weren't subtle. They came in columns black, humming, sharp as blades. Enforcers bipedal, insectoid brutes with psionic shields, descended onto highways, cities, and farmland. In Sao Paulo, an entire neighborhood confronted one. They were unarmed, but each carried a mere dozens of people, flashing the alien's own image back at it, whispering "Kneel." The creature shrieked, unable to process the signal feedback. It fled. In Uganda, a group of farmers baited a Dominion walker into a ravine using goats with blinking trackers taped to them. It fell. In Canada, a retired grandma programmed an old snowplow to drive straight into a Dominion crawler loaded with fuel, fireworks, and her last words, "For Earth, *TCH. The explosion lit up the sky. The resistance wasn't professional. It wasn't coordinated, but it was everywhere, and more importantly, it was creative. Dominion's strategy was linear. Earth was chaos incarnate. By the end of week 1, the High Dominion Council issued its first internal alert in 10,000 cycles. Species 008, Homo sapiens, is exhibiting quantum resistance behavior, unpredictable, illogical, dangerous, requesting re-evaluation of conquest protocol. The request was denied. By then, it was too late. In a small broadcasting studio on the outskirts of Johannesburg, humanity made its second official response. A woman in her 60s sat in front of the camera. Her name was McCullough Doob, former teacher, former activist. Now, just a human. She looked into the lens and spoke clearly. "You told us to kneel. We didn't. You told us to fear you. We laughed. You told us you would erase us. We made memes. We have lost our homes, our cities, our people, but we are still here, still fighting, still flipping you off. And if that bothers you, good. She leaned forward. We're not surrendering. Not because we don't feel fear, but because we know what comes after it. And you don't even understand what comes next. She smiled. See you soon. The broadcast went viral across both human and alien networks. One line echoed everywhere, still flipping you off. The Dominion thought they understood domination, but they had never fought a species that turned grief into rebellion. That laughed in fire, that weaponized disrespect like a warhead. This wasn't just resistance, it was Earth, and Earth wasn't kneeling. The Dominion changed tactics. After the first week of chaos, High Strategist Taylor began deploying suppression nodes. Towering, spike-like structures seated across major continents: Africa, Asia, the Americas, each anchoring a grid designed to neutralize electronic signals and communication. No more memes, no more broadcasts, no more middle fingers over live streams. Silence was their goal. A silent Earth, they believed, would be an obedient one. But Earth had already learned to speak without words. In the outskirts of Snow Hollow, a resistance runner named Mateo crawled through the storm drains, carrying a shoebox wrapped in foil. It wasn't a bomb, not in the traditional sense. Inside was a jury-rigged transmission spike built from an old ham radio, a cell phone battery, and the guts of a Dominion scout drone they'd pulled from the sky with a giant slingshot and a net. He popped out of a manhole cover, threw the box onto a billboard, and sprinted back down before the enforcer drones could triangulate. 12 seconds later, across the city, every Dominion monitor flickered once, then displayed a pixelated image of a man mooning the sky with the words, "Still not kneeling" beneath it. The drones swarmed. Too late, the box burned itself out and fried the local grid, leaving no signal trace. In Tokyo, the Yurei network was born, named after the Japanese ghosts that haunt without form. These weren't fighters. They were artists, coders, former animators, and digital sculptors. They didn't use guns. They used beauty, graffiti that animated under moonlight using phosphorescent paint, audio loops of children laughing laced beneath Dominion broadcasts, sculptures built to look like ancient gods that watched silently from rooftops, always with their hands raised in a familiar one-finger salute. To the Dominion, it was noise. To humans, it was war music. In Moscow, power grids were failing. Dominion. Suppression towers choked the airwaves. But inside a frozen metro station turned bunker, a girl named Sasha Petrov hacked into a Dominion logistics drone. She didn't reprogram it. She taught it, fed it, data, images of concerts, rallies, revolutions. Every great moment when humanity stood as one, the drones, AI built for order, began to fail. Its last recorded message before shutdown: they dance in the fire. The Dominion didn't understand it, but they felt it. Back on the flagship, Yatala ordered more brutal strikes. No more warnings. No more targeted annihilation. Carpet burn zones. Liquidation corridors. Cities that defied would become examples. He selected Manila. The order was given. Ships descended, and just before the assault began, before the weapons ignited the atmosphere and turned buildings to vapor, voice broke through their COMMs. It wasn't military. It wasn't encrypted. It was a live stream. A boy, maybe 10, stood on a rooftop, holding a cardboard sign to the camera. It read, "We're still here, and we're not scared of you." The feed cut out before the missiles hit. The video spread anyway. Somehow, fragments of it leaked into Dominion command nodes. From there, into the translation buffers. Then through stolen satellites and into every human device still active underground. The boy didn't scream. He didn't cry. He stared, defiant and calm, into the face of extinction. The people of Earth gave him a name. the last smile. He became legend. Something broke after that. Not on Earth. In the fleet, there were whispers among the Dominion lower ranks, those bred for obedience, for precisions. Something shifted. A delay in response times. Flickers of hesitation. Exposure to human culture, even in fragments, had left a mark. One enforcer drone, when deployed to a resistance zone, simply powered down mid-flight and crashed into a forest. Its black box was recovered. The last entry. A song, imagined by John Lennon. Yet Talor demanded answers. His scientists blamed Earth's chaotic energy patterns, their raw electromagnetic pollution, their noise. But deep down, they feared something worse, that the virus wasn't technological, it was emotional, and it was spreading. The Dominion activated a new protocol, assimilation. Take prisoners, study them, break them, show the rest what happens when you defy order. They found one, a human soldier in northern India, captured after blowing up a Dominion scout tank with fertilizer and half a cow. He was dragged into an interrogation chamber, 4 meters of black steel, filled with psychic resonance and feedback pulses. They didn't ask questions. They showed him cities falling, friends dying, Earth being crushed hour by hour, and the man just laughed. I saw worse traffic on the M25, he said, blood dripping from his mouth. They increased the pressure. He laughed harder. Your ships float, but your egos sink like bricks. The Dominion finally silenced him with a neural disruptor, but his laughter kept echoing through the comms. Through the walls, through the fleet. The humans had a sickness. They called it humor. The Dominion called it corruption. Back on Earth, the resistance surged. By now, networks were forming. Informal, dirty, beautiful chaos. The iron hives in Detroit welders and engineers, who turned crushed Dominion drones into exosuits. The soul whisperers, teenagers, spreading coded messages through K-pop fan accounts, rallying global supply drops. The Cairo Spines desert nomads using heat signatures and mirrored cloaks to ghost entire convoys. And at the center of it all, the signal, the same one from the first broadcast, the global middle finger. No longer just a message. It had become a frequency, encrypted in sound, buried in light pulses, embedded in every camera flash, every ringtone, every heartbeat sent across Earth's shattered networks. A defiant beat, a planetary rhythm. The Dominion couldn't block it, couldn't decode it, but they heard it, and it terrified them. He convened a council of war. He summoned the elder strategists' voices from across the Dominion's legacy. Minds that had crushed solar systems. They gave him one answer. The humans must be broken at the root, they said. Not their tech, not their weapons, their spirit. So they launched a new weapon. A psychological pulse broadcast from orbit, aimed at Earth's surface. It was designed to trigger despair, hopelessness, surrender. It had worked on other species. They called it the Fade. It swept across the globe in a silent wave, and it almost worked in Berlin. People dropped to their knees. In Cape Town, tears flooded the streets. In Toronto, even the strongest fighters hesitated, blinking into emptiness. But then, something unexpected happened. In New Zealand, a woman started singing, no words, just a melody. Soft. Old. Others joined in. Across hills and valleys, shattered homes and flooded roads, people sang. And the fade so carefully engineered to silence hope was drowned out by human noise, by stubborn joy, by grief turned into song, within hours. Earth was humming again, and the Dominion's greatest psychological weapon had been defeated by folk music. Hitler stared at the incoming reports in silence. His subordinates stood frozen. It was not possible, and yet, it was happening. The humans weren't resisting with firepower. They were resisting with identity. That night, on Earth, in a small coastal town in Chile, A group of children painted the phrase 8 billion middle fingers on a broken Dominion crawler and turned it into a playground in the stars above. The Dominion's core AI flickered for the first time in millennia. It had been designed to calculate outcomes. Now, it hesitated, because the humans had done something no other species had ever done. They had refused to break, and they had made joy into a weapon. The Dominion stopped holding back. No more psychological pulses, no more calibration drones, no more trying to understand Earth. Now came the fire. Ships black as night and sharp as broken glass descended through the atmosphere. The skies over Johannesburg, Bangkok, Toronto, and Rome all split at once. Gravity screamed, clouds boiled, and heat trails turned blue. Dominion. Groundwalkers towering quadrupeds with armored hulls, and anti-grav cannons enfolded like mechanical titans. Smaller units, spider-like and plasma-rammed, fanned through cities, torching infrastructure, severing power, and vaporizing resistance fighters where they stood. They didn't broadcast demands this time. They came to crush. In Berlin, the outer districts fell within 3 hours. A refugee hospital was reduced to ash. A transmission spike went down. The Dominion planted a monolith in the city center, cold, obsidian, humming with suppression waves, and still, no one kneeled. A retired firefighter named Anya shoved a pipe bomb into a Dominion crawler's intake, kicked it for good luck, and walked away without looking back. In Nairobi, a teenager named Jabriel rode a salvage delivery drone straight into the back of an enforcer transport, loaded with propane tanks. And the handwritten note? Return to sender. In Detroit, resistance engineers called the Iron Hives activated their final project, Mech 12, Liberty, a 14-foot metal monstrosity patched together from scrap tanks, old motorcycle frames, a welding torch, and a flamethrower that used motor oil and bad intentions. It lasted 20 minutes, took down 3 walkers before it exploded in a mushroom of rage and molten steel dearth. Wasn't organized, it wasn't coordinated, but it wasn't losing, because every act of destruction bought time, every crazy plan, every slingshot rocket, every grandmother hiding resistance, gear and bread baskets, it all mattered, not because it beat the Dominion, but because it reminded them who they were fighting. Humans. And humans didn't need to win, they just needed to not give up. In the Andean mountains, a new broadcast center activated, codenamed. It had no fixed location, just relays, mounted on llamas, strapped to kites, hidden in shepherds' huts, and inside Coca-Cola vending machines, at sunset. It broadcast to what was left of the world. No orders, no coordinates, just stories, stories of what people were still doing, still risking, still building. One voice. A girl's 12 years old. She told the story of her mother, who threw a frying pan at a Dominion drone and made it crash into a cow. The transmission ended with laughter, real, shaking, unstoppable laughter, and somehow, the aliens heard it. Dominion analysis cores began flagging inconsistencies in troop morale. Enforcers slowed their sweep rates. Field generals requested psychological recalibration. Some lower-tier AI units began mutating from logic errors, mimicking human speech, blinking without mechanical need, pausing during executions. They were breaking because humans had turned resistance into contagion. And in the ruined outskirts of Los Angeles, that contagion found a new champion. His name was Travis Boone. X-Con, street mechanic, once arrested for duct taping fireworks to a subway rat, now commander of the Spite Corps. It wasn't official. Nothing on Earth was anymore. But people followed him, because he wore a bandana soaked in blood, a jacket that read "Bite Me," and carried a 3D printed grenade launcher named Karen. Travis led a dozen half-mad rebels into downtown LA, now crawling with Dominion scouts, and attacked not with military precision, but chaos. Bikes with chainsaws, Molotovs made with tequila, a dog with homemade armor named Kevin. The Dominion tried to respond, But how do you fight people who don't follow rules? Who laugh when outnumbered? Who record their attacks, then overlay dubstep, and post it to the dark web? By the time Travis's crew got wiped out, they'd taken down a quarter of the city's suppression net and live-streamed it to millions. The last frame of the video was Travis flipping off a Dominion drone and shouting, "You wanted a planet to bend. You got one that breaks your teeth." He died, grinning. The video was archived, copied, turned into posters. A new phrase was born, "Boon it." It meant, do something stupid and loud. Even if you don't win. Especially if you don't win. Even Dominion field commanders began whispering about it. One muttered the phrase, "Boon it," in confusion during a tactical debrief. The AI in the room crashed from a recursive logic loop. Meanwhile, in the skies, the war escalated. Humanity had no real space fleet, no cruisers, no orbital defenses left. But what they did have was one derelict ISS module, and Zuri Kelechief, former aerospace engineer, resistance scientist, and one of the few people still able to get into orbit, with the help of an ex-NASA hacker, a Russian rocket team, and a lot of chewing gum. She reactivated a dead satellite, wrote it into the upper atmosphere, and used it to upload a virus directly into Dominion fleet comms. It wasn't meant to disable, it was meant to disrupt. Rhythm.music, specifically, Bohemian Rhapsody, looped forever in every cockpit, every command deck, every neural interface. Human music. Out of sync, chaotic, unpredictable. The Dominion called it cognitive sabotage. They began losing coordination. Fleet formations wobbled, cruisers clipped each other during atmospheric re-entry. One warship, fully automated, simply stopped responding and painted Galileo Figaro on its hull in plasma before crashing into the Pacific. The Dominion finally understood. This wasn't just rebellion, it was spiritual terrorism. They couldn't anticipate it, couldn't contain it, couldn't understand it, because Earth had taught them the one thing they feared most, that defeat could be fun, that rage could be art, that surrender wasn't even on the table. At the end of week 3, High Strategist D. Taller submitted a report to the Dominion Corps. Resistance escalation exponential. Psychological warfare illogical. Species demonstrates suicidal humor, tactics, and weaponized creativity. Propose planetary annihilation. Immediate approval requested. The reply came 5 hours later. Not from the Corps, from the Emperor himself. 6 words. If you fail again, don't return. Yetalar watched Earth from orbit. The blue marble. So small. So loud, he whispered to himself. What are you? And Earth answered him not with words, but with fireworks. Because down below, in cities half in ruins, humans weren't just fighting anymore. They were celebrating, even as bombs fell, even as ships hovered, even as machines marched through streets. They partied, not out of madness, but to remind themselves and the universe, we're still here. And they weren't afraid of anything, they thought. Earth had no counterattack left. They were wrong. Dominion Command observed humanity through heat maps, resource tracking, drone footage. To them, Earth was fractured, outgunned, cornered, running on scraps and fury. A dying ember waiting to be snuffed out. But Earth wasn't dying. It was sharpening underground, in hidden labs and mountain bunkers. Minds, once dismissed hackers, engineers, physicists who couldn't get tenure, were building something monstrous. The name was Project Black Echo. It wasn't a bomb. It was a song, a signal, layered in chaotic frequencies, designed to trigger the Dominion's own psionic field technology, forcing it to fold in on itself, crash its own neural systems, and corrupt its sense of spatial orientation. Earth had learned from the Fade Pulse. They reverse-engineered their enemies, psychic assault, and fed it Earth's madness in return. But they needed time, and time meant distraction. In Lagos, resistance Leader Abiola Mother Brick Folarin launched the Decoy Storm, a series of brutal, flashy assaults designed to draw Dominion attention to hotspots far from the real action. Old city buses were painted like tanks, gasoline barrels rigged with fireworks mimicked missile launches. In one incident, a team of mechanics strapped mirrors to a herd of camels, aimed them at the sky, and created the illusion of a massive energy wave rolling across the dunes. The Dominion scrambled 12 cruisers to intercept the mirage. Meanwhile, in the Peruvian Andes, the real operation began. 5,000 feet beneath an abandoned observatory, a collective of global survivors huddled around the core of Project Black Echo. The brain behind it, Dr. Leila Navarro, Pfeimer audio physicist, sound theorist, jazz violinist, she stood in front of a room full of soldiers, misfits, and rogue AI fragments, and said, "We're going to play the loudest middle finger the galaxy's ever heard." The signal would launch through hijacked Dominion relays spreading across the fleet, into ships, helmets, exomeans. But to connect the network, they needed a seed device aboard a command vessel. No one had ever reached a Dominion capital ship. No one had ever survived getting close, so they found someone who had nothing to lose. Her name was Maya Lark. Age 32, former orbital mechanic widow, lost her partner in the Manila strike, carved the words, "Try me," into the side of her helmet. She didn't volunteer, she insisted. The plan was insane. Launch Maya in a stealth capsule toward the Dominion flagship undetected, unarmed, just her, the Black Echo Spike, and a launch window before the orbital rotation put her on the dark side of Earth again. No backup, no rescue, just rage. As the launch clock ticked down, Maya stared at a small holla of her partner. She didn't cry, she just muttered, "Watch this, babe." Then she was going into the sky, into the void, into their space. The capsule burned cold, slid through defense nets on a trail of radar noise and chopped up death metal. The flagship loomed ahead, a fortress larger than a continent, ringed with electromagnetic shields and death beams. But they didn't see her coming. They didn't imagine anyone would dare. She breached the hull through a maintenance shaft, crawled through 20 meters of ductwork, and jammed the Black Echo Spike into the nearest control node. Then she pressed play, and hell broke loose. The signal burst outward through nodes, relays, consciousness webs, to the Dominion. It wasn't just noise. It was a scream wrapped in music, a chorus of every frequency Earth had ever made, symphonies and riots, jungle drums and jackhammers, the laughter of drunk teenagers, and the roar of Saturn V rockets. The flagship's lights blinked, the gravity stuttered. One of the command A's began quoting Shakespeare backwards and tried to reclassify the Emperor as a toaster. Across the fleet, Dominion ships twitched, collided, and spiraled. Crew began seizing from psychic overload. A destroyer turned upside down and painted a mural of a cat with lasers for eyes on its own. Holden self-destructed out of embarrassment. Black Echo was working. On Earth, people stared up at the sky, watching the stars flicker as enemy ships shorted out like fireworks. It wasn't over, but it was changing, because now the humans weren't just mocking, they were winning. In New York, Resistance Commander Noah Rami took one look at the chaos above and yelled, "Open the damn vaults." That phrase, "open the vaults," was code across the globe. Hidden weapons stashed in ancient bunkers, abandoned labs, decommissioned satellites activated. Some were primitive old railguns and retooled nukes. Some were experimental. Project Saltwire in Canada fired an ion burst that fried 2 Dominion transports mid-air. The Ice Spear Array in Greenland redirected a glacial melt laser into a beam so powerful it vaporized a cruiser before its shields even knew what hit it. And in the Pacific, an old nuclear sub called the Reaper's Laugh rose from the depths, crewed by 4 retired sailors and a holographic AI, who thought she was a pirate queen. She sang sea shanties while torpedoing Dominion ships like it was personal, in orbit. Yatala's command module shook. The bridge reeked of burnt circuitry and failure. He'd lost control of half the fleet, and still the humans laughed. Down on Earth, one of the last working global comms relays lit up. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't military. It was a feed of 8 billion humans, flipping off the sky again for the second time. But this time, they were winning, and they made sure that aliens knew. Across rooftops, cities, mountain paths, and farmlands. Humans didn't just raise middle fingers, they raised signs, painted banners, graffiti messages. We told you. Still here. And the most common one of all, your turn to kneel. For the first time in its conquest history, the Dominion fleet received a unanimous internal status report. Defeat imminent. But Yatala refused to flee. He would rather die than return home in disgrace. He activated the Oblivion Protocol, a last resort self-destruct pulse that would detonate every Dominion ship in the fleet. Wipe the planet clean, and leave nothing but glass and silence, except Maya Lark was still on the flagship, and she was done playing defense. She crawled to the core, bleeding, dying. She triggered Black Echo one final time, point blank. At full strength, it didn't just crash systems. It woke something up, a hidden subroutine, buried deep in Dominion, programming something old, forgotten, left behind by the species they had conquered centuries ago. Compassion. For a moment, the ship hesitated, the core pulsed, and the Oblivion signal failed to launch. Maya collapsed with a grin. Her last words captured by her suit mic, rebroadcast by every hijacked relay on Earth. Boom. The flagship began to break apart, its structure collapsing under the weight of corrupted AI system failures, and one very human virus made from noise and spite, on Earth. People stared skyward as pieces of Dominion metal burned up in the atmosphere, like falling stars. They didn't cheer, not yet, but they looked at each other, and for the first time, really believed it. They could win this. The sky didn't scream, it whispered. Long after, Maya's final transmission echoed across the shattered Dominion fleet. Silence blanketed Earth's orbit like ash after fire. No more obelisks rising from the ground. No more black ships blotting out the sun. No more declarations of control, order, destiny, just silence. And then, applause, soft at first. One person in a bunker under Tokyo clapped. Then a group of mechanics in Nairobi. Then rooftop rebels in Brooklyn. Then miners in New Zealand. Within hours, Earth was echoing not with sirens, not with alerts, but with thunderous, ragged, joyous applause. They hadn't just survived, they'd fought back, and won. The Dominion wasn't entirely gone. A few ships remained in high orbit damaged, flickering with half-broken shields and crippled logic cores. Downed soldiers crawled through forests, twitching like broken toys. The threat was still there, but so was Earth. In every language, on every channel, the same question was asked. Now what? The answer came from an unexpected place. In Greenland, atop the cracked remains of a listening station, an old man who hadn't spoken in 3 years leaned into a still-working microphone and said, "Finish it." He wasn't talking about destruction. He meant the message. Because the war had never been about weapons. Not really. It had been about communication. The Dominion had arrived to silence Earth, to erase its voice, and Earth's answer had always been the same, louder now. Earth would speak one final time. They called it the last broadcast. Not to taunt, not to threaten, but to define in what was left of Geneva. Technicians scavenged Dominion tech and hardwired it into human satellites. AI companions, once designed for cooking or dating, were repurposed into translation nodes. Every resistance leader, every surviving hacker, every bored teenager with a soldering iron contributed to building it. A single message, across the galaxy. To Anyone listening? It began with static. Then a voice, human, female, maybe 40, with a rough accent and a tired but proud tone. "This is Earth," she said. "You came here thinking we were soft, that we would break, that we would bow. And for a moment, you almost had us. You hit hard. You burned cities. You made orphans. You took our air, our light, our music." She paused. "But you made one mistake. You didn't kill our spite." The signal pulsed, wrapped in data, encoded with culture poetry, memes, movies, rage. You thought our greatest weapons were bombs and bullets, but they were middle fingers and bad ideas. You made us angry. And when humans get angry, we get creative. The voice cracked, just a little. You wanted surrender. You got chaos. You got fire. You got a planet full of people who refused to stop laughing, even as they bled. More pulses. Images of humanity in every shape, every shade, every mess. Children flipping off warships. Dancers in gas masks. Engineers in underground. Bunkers fist-bumping after another drone fell. You tried to teach us fear, but in the end, we taught you who the hell we are. The message ended, not with a threat, but with a song. No lyrics, just instruments. A piano played by a 6-year-old girl in a crater that used to be a school. The melody was messy, flawed, beautiful, and it spread across the void to the edges of Dominion space. 2 colonies too, afraid to ever resist. 2 other empires watching Earth's war with quiet dread. And something happened. On one distant mining world, a group of enslaved workers, reptilian, yellowed, heard the signal and snapped their chains. On a ship controlled by Dominion AI, a low-level engineer with fur and 6 fingers whispered a word they'd only seen in intercepted Earth files. Rebel. The Dominion didn't fall that day, but it began to crack. Not from warheads, from influence, from contagion, from Earth. And Earth. Earth buried its dead, rebuilt its cities, planted gardens on the bones of alien titans, wrote stories, sang louder, honored the fighters who never got to see the end. Maya Lark, Travis Boone, the boy with the cardboard sign, and 8 billion stubborn souls who gave the universe a message it would never forget. We don't kneel. The last monument built was not of a soldier. It was of a middle finger, 20 stories tall, made of melted Dominion steel, standing in the middle of what used to be Times Square. The plaque beneath it read only 4 words: "Come, try again, please."